Hi, my name is Mark, and I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about purchasing equipment as a new coach and even as an existing coach. So I'll pull up my computer screen here and kind of show you the website, the VEX website. And so when you're going in, and we'll just go to the grades 9 plus, even though we have a 7th and 8th grade program that does that. And so this is, you can certainly do what works best for you. This is my opinion in terms of what I would purchase for equipment as an existing coach and even as a new coach. As you can see on the screen, VEX does set it up for a rookie coach to potentially come in and buy either a competition starter kit or a competition super kit, and those pricing on there. And they also have classroom starter bundle sets and different things on there as well. And so some of the benefits to, I personally would not buy the starter kit just because of what it has to offer. But if I go into like the super competition kit and show what that has to offer, I like it. As a first year coach, it might be nice to buy because you kind of have everything there. But I also wouldn't necessarily recommend that to a first year coach because there's a lot of things in there that if we click over to the picture of kind of what's on there of all the parts and everything, they have a lot of great things in there. You can see that it comes with 8 motors, a brain, a controller, 1 battery. Gives you a lot of structure, a lot of gears and sprockets and everything that goes with it. So it kind of has everything bundled together for you if that's what you're interested in doing. But now that VEX has been unveiling new equipment, I personally would probably go to buying either the bundle for $6.99, which I'll pull up here in a second, or the classroom starter pack, which is a ClawBot for $7.49. And so it's kind of personal preference. I've helped a lot of coaches throughout the last number of years when they're like, hey, I've got X amount of dollars to spend in terms of how much I can spend $3,000 to upgrade to V5 and for how many teams. And so buying a super competition kit like this, or a V5 competition super kit for $1,900 might not necessarily fall in your range or your budget to get all the teams on. And so, a different option of going with that is, let's see if I can pull it up with the right. They have an option where you could go down to this V5 classroom starter kit, which gives you the ClawBot. And if you look at the picture of that, it gives you the brain and the controller, 4 controllers, everything that's in the super kit. But it gives you the option of having that ClawBot, and you can certainly buy minus the ClawBot kit for $50 cheaper. For $50 cheaper and not have the ClawBot kit, so that's $6.99 out there. But this would be an option, so that way. I use ClawBots in my lab with my kids so that they can do some the programmers can get going, and you have all that other additional structure for $50. And so again, this could be an option to get you the brain and 4 motors and kind of get you started. And then as you look at the other options that they have, and I'm not quite sure it's on this page. Yeah, right here they have the V5 system bundle, which you can see is just $50 cheaper, and you wouldn't get the ClawBot kit with it. So again, it's personal preference. If you want the ClawBots and you want to spend an extra $50, great thing to take if you start demoing out in your community and everything. But this would give you kind of the nuts and bolts. And if you just went with this V5 system bundle, then you could go ahead and add on additional motors, and so kind of participating from there. And so I would either do this bundle for $6.99 or the ClawBot kit for $7.49, and then from there I would add on additional parts from there. And so as as you're shopping all the V5 parts, as they get into different components. So if I get off the kits, and just get into V5 in general, they'll start giving you where you can see definitely in your kit, if you buy a kit or not, getting additional batteries for your competition team. I would recommend, for sure 2 batteries per team, but it's nicer to even have 3 to 4 per team on it. In terms of initial sensors that you could purchase right away, The only ones that my teams tend to use a lot is the inertial sensor. And so the inertial sensor is helping them out with, getting their robot lined up on the field for programming or autonomous, kind of getting their bearings, on the field as they go. And again, that's personal preference on it and that. The other sensor that the kids tend to use sometimes is the rotation sensor. And it is built into motor encoders are built in and everything with that, but that is something you could add on as an option down the road. Additional parts that you would need as we keep looking through products. Obviously, as a first-year coach, if you can get a field, that'd be kind of good. VEX came out with a brand new pneumatics kit this year, and part of that I think is because of the sourcing of the old pneumatics that's there and everything. So for $299, one of the nice options. Like I said, I haven't just looked at a kit here yesterday. It's one of the coaches had it here, and the nice thing is the different lengths of the pistons that they have, or the cylinders as they would call them in the kit, giving you the options. But realistically, you would need or could have one kit per team, depending on how many options they want. It kind of gives you everything in there. I like the upgrade because it gives you two gauges in there. One that shows the pressure in your system, and the second one is the actual amount of pressure that your pressure regulator that's allowing how much PSI your robot's performing as you're there. And so this is something too that, do you need to have pneumatics? Not necessarily right away as a new coach, but something definitely that you could put on your wish list down the road, or buy one kit and have your kids start exploring it, and then add on additional as funds become available for you or to you in your program. But as you continue to look at different parts, one of the things as to why I kind of shy away from the super kits or the starter kits is that VEX came out here recently with, I do believe just last year, with a 6-piece sprocket. So they're using the VEX IQ chain that come with it, and so they've got a smaller base product or a smaller base sprocket that kids like, but when you're looking at your minute measurements and everything that kind of go into the components. And so again, you can pick up different things, and I personally have a variety of these sprockets and the chain add on. And if you're an IQ program, it's the same chain that you have in your IQ kits that you could steal out of there and use for your program. But just the flexibility of going away, and you can kind of see a picture there too of kind of the diameter outbreak and everything, where you can see things are smaller, the teeth are smaller in that aspect, and so just the sizing and everything can kind of play into effect too from the older sprockets and high-speed chains. So it's kind of like I said, a personal preference. I've helped a number of coaches with equipment. You get into wheels. The starter kits, the kits kind of come with, if you do the Clawbot, they have the 4-inch Omnis and the traditional traction wheels in the back. And, so I mean, it's kind of the variety of where you're at. And you can see for Omni wheels, this year my teams have been running the 3¼ to the 4-inch. And the newer Omni wheels are more of a true size on that measurement, so just in terms of figuring out your programming and different things that go with it. And so just a variety of different wheels that you have on there, again, for your program. And so you can see that they have a wide range of wheels, and depending on where they're at, they have the Omni anti-static wheels, as they call them, a lot better for mounting the newer versions that are out now too. So as you're starting out, it gives you a variety of different components and parts there as well. So kind of piecemealing it together, I mean, you can look at what the super or starter kit or anything has, but then you can add on additional parts. And I always, sometimes just getting parts in, if they're new, and having kids explore with them are going to be critical there as well. You're looking at motors as a new team or as an existing team. You can use up to 88 watts of motors, and so in this sense, this is the page for the 11-watt motor, so you could use up to 8 of these on your robot. I recommend having 2 to 4 additional motors throughout the course of the season, because They get put under a lot of stress and strain throughout the process, so having those. Each motor comes with the green cartridge, which you can see down below. Talks about an 18 to 1, 200 RPM gear ratio on that, so buying additional, you don't have to worry about buying the green cartridges. Again, they come with a motor, but buying some torque ones with the 100 RPM, depending on the application that your students want to get involved with. If they want to provide a lot of torque or something that's going to take a lot of power to go, going down to those. And then a lot of the teams use the blue cartridge or the high speed or the 600 RPM cartridges as well. So being able to purchase those and be able to put those in the hands of your students. They have replacement caps and screws. A lot of times those screws that are on the robot, the 4 screws that hold that on, my teams take those screws out and actually zip tie the motors together, so that way if a motor does have to be switched in a match, all they have to do is cut a zip tie or two and switch out the cartridge that they need to and put on the new motor, and they're ready. So in between a match, you might be able to have like a 3-minute timeout in eliminations. You can quickly change out a motor in a matter of seconds versus trying to get in and get at 2 screws or might have to take some gearing off on it and everything. So it kind of helps out on that aspect with it as well. So I don't know that. I do believe the new 5.5 watt motors are on a separate component there. So other things to consider, whether you purchase the engineering notebook they have there or you can do it digitally. Additional battery clips are always critical. Here are the new 5.5 watt motors that VEX has offered. And so you can use these in combination with the 11 watt motors. Again, up to a total of 88 watts. So if you use 6 11 watt motors, 7 11 watt motors, you could then expand and have 2 5.5 watt motors. The big difference from these are as it notes there, it says this motor operates at a set RPM and is not compatible with V5 smart motor cartridges. So this motor is set, and it talks about perfect for low RPM or lightweight applications. So like in this year's game with our not acorns, our tri-balls, being able to have an intake system might be nice to have 2 of these on your intake and having that, not having to use as much power on that, and it kind of expands your application and knowledge as you go. From what I saw, the kits they don't offer anything on those. And so other products that you can get involved with then, let's see. Standoffs are good to have, to give a good option for a lot of teams to use for different components for building off or being able to secure different parts, even if it's on your drivetrain or different things. So having a variety of those. I don't even know. Our bin is pretty full at school. Well, normally the kids have different things on there. Angles are good. Spacers and washers, bearings, all important things that you can incorporate in. The kits come with those as well, but again, getting a variety of those different components. A few other things I'll point out. They have shaft collars. You can see that they used to have a hex head in there. Now they have a T8 Torx screw in there, so that you can use those to be able to make lock permanent. But they've given a lot more options on shaft collars, whether they're clips or slide-ons. The slide-on one that's here, that's more of a VEX IQ thing that isn't a permanent thing. You'll see that on the Clawbot kit. I don't recommend necessarily using that with something that you want permanently stuck, but if it's to put on something that isn't as critical, they work pretty well. As I misspoke earlier, polycarbonate sheets, so you can go in there and use up to 2 square feet per robot, for the season. And if you're like for majority of my teams, they tend to rebuild more than a handful of times throughout the course of the season. So sometimes they cut one piece and then they go on to a new robot and they get another one and start redesigning. Smart cables, if we take a deeper look at those, you can buy cables that are already made for you, if that's what you recommend and do. Otherwise, you can buy a crimping tool and individual smart cable stock, and then connectors that go with it. The biggest thing on that is just making sure that as students set up the pins and make the connections on that, the yellow wire is on the same side on both ends of the connectors as they set it up. That's what I recommend, because when you talk about a competition robot, you want to have great cable management, and that way you can cut specific lengths to that robot and really kind of clean up your robot design and everything and make it look super sweet with that. And plus, the nice thing with it is making sure that again that they're set up. So if you have some of the existing ones that are built, you can kind of duplicate those. And the last couple things that I'll talk about is just when you look at they have aluminum kits, but I would recommend buying the C channels. The ones that I see the most from competition in terms of that are not the steel, but the aluminum C channels. The 1x2x1x25 6-pack for $32.99. Students tend to use those quite a little on their robots, so they're nice to have the 5 long or 5 section long, and then the one right below it, the 35 long, which is a 7 section, which is 5 holes in the aluminum. Those are the two that are probably the most prevalent among competition teams. The 3 wide, which is 3 holes across, for $40 as well. Nice to have some of that. Not a ton of that gets used in my program, but we do have some on hand. And the 5 wide, so the 1x5 material, very seldom does that get used within our program. And so I would not necessarily jump into that, buying it. I mean, obviously, if you needed something 5 wide and you didn't have any around, you could put a 2 and a 3 together, or again, you could put 2 2s together and put some standoffs in between it, or whatever you could do. You can certainly fabricate it if you need to. But this is one of the materials in your program that you're going to see once you kind of get built up, that each season you're going to have to order additional materials because they get cut and bent and destroyed in the competition aspect. So it's kind of nice to break it down amongst what's best for it. And then, like I said, in terms of different components on there, I think that's pretty much about all. The rest of this is just competition components. If your kids want letter bins, jacket patches, they can certainly get those for each season they compete in. And there we have it. Zip ties, you can buy those at your local hardware store or wherever you got on it, and so you're doing pretty well there. I think that's about it. Is there any questions that are being asked anywhere from people out there? Great question that was asked. What other sites besides VEX? One of those that is set up in terms of finding your kind of go-all is there's a RoboSource website that offers a lot of the different components. One of the nice things I like about RoboSource is that they have color-coordinated screws, and when we made the switch in my program from the hex heads to the Torx, or the star screws as I like to call them, is being able to have those color-coded screws. It does justice, because although they have the light blue and the dark blue are right next to each other in size, the green and the light green, it's so easy for kids to just throw their screws in the bins and color coordinate them out and separate them out for the parts. And so setting up a kit, I have individualized kits with all the fasteners, the screws, and different components that go with it. So RoboSource is a kind of a nice site to go to use. Like I said, that's where I get my screws from. I also buy most of my polycarbonate there. Getting thinner nylock screws, it's amazing how many kids try to get away from using nuts and bolts to go to zip ties to kind of save weight on it. I guess those are the two big ones that I kind of use. I have individualized, I use pneumatics, where I would go to the Orange Coast Pneumatics and buy the older version of pneumatics that they had available on that, but those are the two big ones for me. I don't know if any of you guys here have any other sites that you go to. So from that perspective, I mean, I'm always, you can reach me. If you got questions or whatever, I've helped out a lot of different teams. They say, they have this much in their budget, and this is kind of my recommendation. Again, my biggest recommendation on that is, if you go out and look at the super kit VEX has to offer and kind of figure out what do they have in it and what do you really need to have or what are wants, and kind of put that together in a budget. And sometimes buying, if you have the brain and the controllers and the batteries, buying everything else is just based on what do you have for your budget. And so if you're trying to start a program with 2 teams and you only have, let's say, a budget of $3,000 to get started, that doesn't allow you to buy 2 super kits. And so being able to go and buy the brain and the controller package is a lot better option for you on that. So with that, thanks, and certainly reach out to any of us here at Unvexed if you have questions or would like some guidance. I'm more than willing to help, and looking forward to seeing a lot of you this season and here in a couple days at Mall of America.